don't know if I really love this decision.
Over the middle, got his man, and look at him go! Jalen Waddle for the touchdown!
Welcome to Inside Leverage, your gateway to the fascinating realm of the Miami Dolphins. Join us as we delve deep into the team's dynamic Super Bowl journey. We invite you to share your most scorching takes, unwind, and relish in our captivating experience.
Blocked by Armstead. Going, he's got him! He's got him! Tyreek Hill! And the Dolphins have come back!
A big play on the first one! Home run! Play one! To the house! What a start for the Dolphins!
It's Inside Leverage. We always gonna put on the show, baby. That's what we do.
Appreciate you, Z-Bot, for coming through, my guy. What to do? Hey, Z-Bot, man, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, man. Let them know what you got going on and where they can find you. Yeah, work and all that
Fellas,
good
what's
stuff, man.
happening? And let me tell you, first and foremost, I'm glad you prefaced that we're going to be talking about this objectively, because I was just listening to some non-objective takes for the last 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm glad that you put that out there, because I want to get into this game objectively, because this game to me has game of the year written all over it. Even though we're in week 4, this is about as good as it gets. I could not be more excited. And I'm stoked to be on here talking about it with you guys today, because I can't wait. We got 4 more days to milk away until we got to watch this bad boy. So talking about it definitely helps pass the time. But thanks again for having me on, fellas. Z-Bot, I'm over at the Buffalo Fanatics. My show's on Monday night, but we do stuff all throughout the week. We do pre-games. We have shows going on Monday through Friday typically, and I'm all over Twitter as well, so you can find me here. But yeah, a little bit of everywhere, mostly Twitter, because I spend way too much time there as is. And then Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel is where I do all of my shows and podcasting and whatnot.
Appreciate you giving us your time. Go ahead, Wally. Go ahead, kick it off, my good guy.
Hey man, thank you for your time, my boy Z-Bot. I just have a quick question for
Let's
you.
hear it.
Listen, how you guys gonna stop the first team the actual NFL team you've actually faced this season? How you gonna stop?
Listen.
And who's gonna guard Tyreek? And who's gonna guard Waddle? And then at the slot, which you guys are terrible at, who's gonna guard that? Because I'm concerned about your defensive linebackers in space. I know you should be too, but let's talk about it, please.
Well, I think.
Thank you for your
the pleasure's mine. Good. It's a fair question, and I don't think there's an argument to it as far as this game for the Bills being by far the biggest test. Through the first 3 weeks, the Bills had a favorable schedule. The fact that they dropped that game to Zach Wilson on Monday night, still, the Bills could go on and win the Super Bowl this year. I'll never forget that. I was in the stadium for that one. I'm still sick about it. They've righted the wrongs over the last 2 weeks, but it was against the Raiders. It was against the Commanders. And they've looked phenomenal in both. But this is a whole different animal. And this is why it's such a big game for Buffalo. There is so much more to prove, in my opinion, as far as this season is concerned, for the Bills than there might be for the Dolphins. I think overall there might be more to prove for Miami, because I think in this particular game, should Miami win it, they finally now take that leap into becoming the king of the AFC East for the immediate future here. It would be very tough for Buffalo to make up 2 games. It's Miami's road to finish out. They're in the driver's seat should they win this game, so it's massive. But for Buffalo, this is by far their biggest test. And to answer your question as far as how is the linebacker core going to hold up and how are they going to cover Tyreek Hill? Well, I don't know if anybody in the league, maybe outside of Belichick to some degree, although it doesn't even matter because he still doesn't win the game despite mitigating Tyreek Hill's impact. There really isn't anyone in the league who's capable of defending him. And shout out to Mike McDaniel for what I find to be one of the most prolific offenses we have seen in some time. His ability to take the pressure off of Tua, his ability to get Tyreek Hill open in space and just take advantage of the athleticism on that team is extraordinary. And you saw it on full display last week without Jalen Waddle. So right now, Buffalo, with the departure of Tremaine Edmonds, there was some concern that the linebacker core might not be where we would want it to be going into this season. But if you look at where the Bills are currently, Matt Milano, one of the best linebackers in the entire league and one of the most underrated players in the league. He's been absolutely balling out. So he's the guy you have to rely on in the middle. But then right now, what we're looking at with the Bills is an uprising of a young talent that I don't think anybody could have possibly saw coming. Terrell Bernard comes off the AFC Defensive Player of the Week against Washington, doing just about everything you could possibly ask for out of the linebacker position. And this is a guy we didn't even know was going to be our starter in the offseason. He has stepped up. He has answered the call. But as you mentioned, through the first 3 weeks, it has been an easier setup for him to do so than it's going to be this week. That is why I personally am very excited to see a guy like Bernard, who has shined early on here. I'm excited to see how he holds up against what will be his toughest task to date, trying to stop Waddle and Hill in the middle, which nobody ever seems to have an answer for.
Z-Bot, really quick, if I could just I don't know, so hands really quick. I just wanted to piggyback off that thought. We were discussing earlier that we haven't seen him put in much conflict as far as in coverage and things like that. I feel like he's been able to kind of just sit back and sink times and make some plays, and he's reading his keys and he's great instinctually, and I like what he's doing. Even though he's a smaller guy, we've had smaller linebackers. Of course, one of the greats that.
Did he get a phone call? Am I in the group?
I think he might have got a call.
I think he got a call.
Hey,
Go ahead, D1.
question.
Go ahead. I think it was French.
Hey, Z-Dot, thank you so much for your time. I have a question, maybe a two-part question. If Sean McDermott is the defensive coordinator or the head coach, but he's on the defensive side of the ball, if this season the defense becomes exposed and the defense doesn't live up to its side of the bargain, does that because I say in this game, I predict it to be a good old-fashioned blowout. A lot of people have said it's going to be a close game. I predicted like a 40-17 kind of game. If Sean McDermott is the DC and the defense keeps getting exposed, does this blowout put Josh Allen on the hot seat or more Sean McDermott with him being the DC and the defense not getting it right?
Well, if it's a game like what you're talking about, I mean, I don't know if necessarily the hot seat. That's, to me, why they extended McDermott and Bean in the offseason, because going into this year, there was a lot of manufactured turmoil going on the outskirts of this organization between the fabricated Stephon Diggs stuff, the consistent talk of Josh Allen's downfall, and then, of course, Leslie Frazier's odd departure. That, to me, out of all of those things, was one of the more interesting, because I don't think we still quite know what happened there. We know something happened. What exactly happened, no one knows. And then, of course, because of that, the entirety of the defensive play calling falls in the hands of Sean McDermott. So I think because of the added pressure, that's why the Pagulas extend McDermott to try and take some of that pressure off of him. Now, through the first 3 weeks, and I know it's not the Miami Dolphins offense, and not many are, but they have looked like one of the best defenses in the league early on here. So one blunder, should it be like what you're talking about, I don't think it necessarily puts McDermott on any sort of hot seat. Now, if we continue to see that against the Dolphins twice this season, the Chiefs, the Eagles, if there's 5-6 games that are like that, well, then you have a whole different conversation at hand. But I don't know if one game necessarily does that. To talk about your point with Josh Allen, we have one incredible performance against the Las Vegas Raiders, sandwiched between two mediocre / really bad performances in the Jets game. That was brutal. And the Washington game was a bit more towards the median, but not what you necessarily want to see. This is the game at home in a huge spot, in which, my opinion, I find to be a more closer to a must-win game than maybe others do, just because losing your first 2 games in the division is a really tough hole to dig out of if you want to win the overall division, pursue the number 1 overall seed. So this is a huge game for Josh Allen. And because of the start he's had, this is his best opportunity to come out and kind of rewrite his script for the season, because so far I don't know if we necessarily have seen exactly what we're going to be getting from Josh Allen in 2023.
Thank you, Z-Bot. Go ahead, Big Earn.
Thank you. for hosting the space. Thanks for coming in, Z-Bot. My question is, the way that I think the Dolphins are going to approach this game is similar to the Charger game. I believe they'll be happy to allow you guys to run for 4 or 5 yards of carry or whatever it is, just knowing that it gets harder to run the ball the further you get down the field. And they're gonna hope that they can make a play on third down. If you guys get in 3rd and 2 or 3rd and whatever if we get you in a 3rd down, we just need one play, you know, to stop the drive, or we'll settle for you guys kicking a field goal while we, hopefully, in their opinion, I think they have, we're lights out in the red zone, and they're very confident. The Dolphins are very confident in their ability to score touchdowns as opposed to field goals. And that was kind of the game they played with San Francisco. I'm sorry, I said San Diego. I meant Los Angeles. Um, so what do you think would happen in that? Do you think that what do you think would happen in that scenario if the Dolphins put themselves with 4 or 5 or 6 DBs on the field and said, "Go ahead, run it. Have your 4, have your 5. We're fine with that. We know that when you get down the field, it's going to be a lot harder to run the ball, and we think we're going to be able to hold you to 3." What do you think happens in that scenario? They're gonna appeal to Josh Allen's greedy nature and hope that he makes a mistake and he becomes impatient and that little hero inside of him comes out and makes a mistake. What do you think happens in that scenario?
Yeah, as Mike McDaniel should. That's how every defense should be approaching the Bills right now until they prove otherwise. Luckily for us, Josh Allen was approached that way by Josh McDaniels in the Vegas game, and he took him to the woodshed. He picked him apart all game, 31-37. Defenses are begging Josh Allen to do what he did against the Jets, and that is throw the ball off his back foot 70 yards down the field into double coverage and win the game based on self-inflicted problems caused by Josh Allen in this offense that if they weren't committed, they'd win the ball game. I mean, if you go back and watch that Jets game, there is no fathomable way as you watch Aaron Rodgers go down that you could justify the Bills losing that game other than Josh Allen pissing the game away. And that, unfortunately, is exactly what he did. And I think defense look at that and they say, if we give Josh the opportunity to do that, we're going to allow him to because we think that gives us a better opportunity to turn the game into our favor. So it goes one of two ways. It depends on what Josh Allen wants to do in his mind. If he wants to show up like he does against the Jets, it's going to be a rough day. If he wants to show up like he did against the Raiders, well, then it's going to be a methodical, surgical type game where your defense is going to have a tough time stopping the underneath stuff as well as the run game if you're consistently trying to force him to go deep. Now, if you're talking about trying to force the Bills into a similar style to which the Chargers were forced to in week 1, I'm signing up for that because the Chargers ran for almost 250 yards in that game. And all of a sudden, the Bills have evolved into a team that can run the ball, which we are not used to. Through the first 3 weeks, James Cook's 3rd overall in the NFL in rushing. And that's what interests me the most, actually, about this game. The big talk is going to be Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Tua, Waddle, Hill. To me, this game might come down to Mostert and James Cook. One of the players on the Miami Dolphins roster that fears me the most in this game is Raheem Mostert. He picked us apart on the ground last year, if you remember. In the game under the lights Saturday night in the snow, he went off. He absolutely diced up the Bills on the ground, and he's off to an incredible start himself early on in the season here as well. James Cook is exactly what we wanted him to be when we drafted him in the 2nd round. He is starting to evolve. So I know these matchups get set to be these big quarterback showdowns, these big air raid showdowns. I look at this game, it very well could be won based on which running back has the better day. And I think both of them are set up to have terrific days if that's what the mindset is going in on the offensive side of the ball. 2 really underrated and really good running backs early on here in the 2023 season.
Go ahead, Wally, and then Steve.
Z-Bot, to carry it on that point, I talk a lot of shit, and I talk about Tyreek and 2 and all that, but the real thing to the Buffalo games was the real key to the Buffalo games is consistency and committing to the run. I
Yeah,
believe when we beat you guys, it was committing to the run. Even that the game where you guys control the possession. Raheem Mustard, like you said, he had great games. We just went away from him, and I think this year we're actually committed to the run and the way our running plays develop and with all our motion. I am in the mindset that it takes a lot for a young player, specifically a first year starting linebacker, to be able to see that. You know what I mean? To be able to. So I
sure.
believe Poyer and Michael Hyde are going to be a big key in this game. But I still don't trust your linebackers in that. How do you feel about us exploiting that against you guys?
So if you look back at last year, a couple points, because I think that's a really good indicator of what we might see again this year, except I think the Dolphins are more refined now. I actually went back and I was at that game and I've rewatched it several times since because being at that game, it had felt as though Miami had dictated the pulse, but they could not capitalize in situations where they could have easily have taken stranglehold of that game. And I feel like for a Dolphins fan, it's got to be a tough one to go back and watch the highlights of because there are numerous third downs and numerous red zone opportunities that the Dolphins squandered in that game. And if they had capitalized on it, they win that game. That game was for the division that night, and the Bills ultimately wound up winning it on the expiring field goal. But Mostert ran the ball down the Bills' throat all game. If you watch, there's multiple third and shorts where they would wind up going away from the run and throwing it, and it did not work out. There were also 2 or 3 red zone appearances. I remember one in particular where Trent Sherfield just flat out dropped a slant route in the end zone for a touchdown. So I went back and watched, and I'm thinking to myself, man, if Miami doesn't self-inflict a lot of their own personal shortcomings in this game, it probably goes the other way. And to me, that is a major key here. So to talk to your point about the Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer situation with Waddle and Hill, and then the overall interior linebacking core. Last year in that game alone, Tyreek Hill did not have an overwhelming game. He was held to 79 yards. And I know that is a pretty damn good day for just about anybody. But for Tyreek Hill and what we come to expect from him now, it's not necessarily a great day. You're expecting 100 plus from Tyreek. But at the same time, Jalen Waddle only had 3 catches in that game for plus 100 yards. And as I keep mentioning, Raheem Mostert was running all over the place. I think with this Miami offense, no matter how good you are on defense, and I think the Bills are pretty stacked up, you're going to have to pick your poison at some point. You cannot simply take away Waddle, Hill, and Mostert. One of those guys is bound to have an outbreak of a day come Sunday. What you have to be able to do is kind of back to the point we were just talking about, and that's mitigating the opportunities that each team has to capitalize in the biggest moments, whether it be short yardage situations or in the red zone. And in my personal opinion, I think that this game probably comes down to whoever commits less turnovers and less errors. We know, as both fans of the Bills and the Dolphins, that once a game or so, Tua likes to underthrow a ball for no reason. He'll be looking like the best quarterback in the league for 4 or 5 consecutive drives and all of a sudden throw a ball where you're asking yourself, what the hell was that? As a Bills fan, that is almost precisely what we get out of Josh Allen, too. It's got to come down to who plays the cleanest game. So regardless of what the Bills are able to do with the linebackers, with Micah Hyde, with Jordan Poyer, I think someone on that Dolphins offense is destined to have a day. Can Tua and the offense play a clean football game and take advantage of their opportunities? As with the Bills offense, can they do the same? I think that's what the game really comes down to on Sunday.
Appreciate you,
Hey man,
Z-Bot, man. Thank you for your
thank
time,
you,
man.
man.
You
Appreciate
got it,
you.
man.
Steve was next, right?
It was Steve the Mystic, yeah.
All right, awesome.
Thanks again for coming to talk to us. You kind of touched on something that I kind of feel that both of these teams kind of suffer from the most, which are self-inflicted wounds. I do believe that both teams, their entire seasons are dependent on, who's going to have the less self-inflicted wounds, just because that's our histories. I'm looking at how the teams are and how they were kind of performing last year at this point and then how we are performing this year at this point. And I'm not even talking about overall stats because things skew stats and things happen. Do you believe, from your point of view, that Miami's offensive line and run game is running more efficiently coming into this game? And how do you feel about your defense this year versus how it was going into that first game last year?
I don't know if there's anybody in the league more efficient than Miami right now. I don't even know if there's, frankly, is there even an argument to be had to a team that's even been comparable? It's not even close. What we're seeing here is unbelievable. And what Mike McDaniel has been able to do for Tua, the key in the NFL is to be able to take your quarterback and maximize his strengths. And Tua's strengths is his accuracy and his ability to get the ball out. And they have maximized that to almost perfection through the first 3 weeks. Tua, the biggest concern, of course, coming into the year was his health. So what does Mike McDaniel do? He says, we're not gonna let him even have the ability to get injured. The guy does not get hit. He doesn't get touched. The ball's out of his hand in what feels like a millisecond. And when you have a guy like Waddle and Hill who can create separation immediately off the line, they are taking full advantage of it. And not to mention the amount of motion, it's almost impossible to fully cover Tyreek Hill with the amount they're moving him up and down the field. So absolutely, to answer your question as far as do I feel like Miami's more efficient, not only do I feel like they're more efficient, I think they're the most efficient offense in the league right now. And I'm not entirely sure if there's a close second. As far as defense is concerned, this is where I think the game differentiates the most. The Miami Dolphins have an elite offense, and unarguably through 3 weeks, the best offense in the league. The Buffalo Bills have an elite offense as well, although right now it's not quite on the level that the Miami Dolphins are on. And I don't know how it could ever really get there. They don't have the type of talent and speed that the Miami Dolphins do. It's just two completely different teams. The biggest differentiating factor to me here is the fact that I think the Buffalo Bills defense is on another level compared to where Miami's is currently. So because of that, the Bills offense is going to have to step up a notch or two more than we've seen thus far, despite the past 2 weeks scoring 38 and 37 points consecutively. They're going to have to take advantage of the opportunities given to them because I personally think the difference in this game lies on the defensive side of the ball. The Bills' defense has been extraordinary. This is a completely different situation, so we've yet to see if it's going to hold up in this type of environment with this type of talent that Miami has. But Miami's defense through the first couple of weeks here, outside of the Patriots game, where I don't know if the Patriots are going to have a prolific day on offense against anybody. I mean, the Chargers pretty much did whatever they wanted against them. And even though last week in the Denver Broncos, who have just not been able to get it going against anybody, they still were able to move the ball. They just could not stop turning it over. And you got to think towards the third quarter, they just mailed it in and were halfway into the locker room based on how bad of a blowout that was. So the Bills have got to be able to find a way to move the ball consistently. I think they have the upper hand there. But what almost knocks that off a peg a bit, in my opinion, is just the fact that there's nobody in the league that is going to be able to adequately shut down the entirety of the weaponry that the Miami Dolphins do have. So there's so many factors in this game that if one goes one way or one goes another way, it can flip the entire thing. But I think the biggest outlier here might be the differentiating talent in defense. It's just going to come down to who is going to be able to exploit the weaknesses more, the Bills or the Dolphins.
Go ahead, Mistake, then I got a question.
Hey,
man.
Hey, man, I appreciate your time. I'm glad that you alluded to the division and, potentially being down 2 games. I actually had the question in the sense of pressure. If Miami does show up, take care of business, we get the victory. How confident in your team do you think that they could come down to Miami later in the season and get that victory to potentially throw you guys back into contention for the division? Because personally, I think there's a lot more pressure on Buffalo to stay with us in this race for the division. And I think this game is really going to, I wouldn't say it's not a make or break at all, but I think confidence-wise could kind of change some things for your team moving forward. What do you think about that?
I think there's two types of pressure that we're going to see in this game, one on each side of the ball. I think the pressure for Miami is the overall public perception. Because through the first 3 weeks, they are America's darling, and they should be. When you score 70 points and win by 50 points against a team that, in my opinion, is not bad enough to lose by 50 points and is not bad enough to allow 70. I mean, that was just insanity. They have earned every bit. This is the difference between last year and this year, in my opinion. Last year, when everybody wanted to put Miami on a pedestal early on due to their hot start, it didn't seem like it was as warranted as it is this year. There is no argument against it. Anybody who wants to argue against it currently, to me, they're just hating, and I try my best to avoid that because it's a tough area to play around in as a fan. You've got to be honest and subjective, or you're just going to be miserable nonstop. The Miami Dolphins have earned the love they have gotten early on here. I think the pressure is, can they do that against the team that they've been trying to overpass the last couple of seasons here? That's where I find the pressure to be in the public perception. But to your point, the pressure to me is mostly on Buffalo, because if they lose their first 2 games of the year within the division, and you look at the rest of the schedule that they have to endure, I don't know where you're making up 2 games, and I don't know where Miami is losing 2 games. Even if the Buffalo Bills go into Miami later in the season and win, do I anticipate Miami losing 2 games to the Jets or one of the games to the Jets and the next game against the Patriots? I don't. So I don't know where you're making those 2 games up. That's why, to me, this game might be bigger to me than I think other people are making it out to be. And I understand it's tough to realize that because it's week 4. But I just don't know where the Bills make up 2 divisional games going forward here if they lose this game. So if you were to ask me who has the most pressure, it's definitely the Buffalo Bills in this game when you want to talk about playoff seeding. If you're talking about overall, what they're going to say about you on first take or whatever, maybe it's the Dolphins because of where they've been the last couple of seasons, where they've been trying to get to. But if we're talking about what matters most, I think the pressure is certainly on Buffalo, and it's up to them to prove that they still are the top dog in the AFC East. This is the opportunity to do it. What's at stake this Sunday is either maintaining your crown in the AFC East for the foreseeable future or potentially a changing of the guard. That, to me, is what is on display on Sunday, and that, to me, is why this game is so massive.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time again. I have a quick question because you sound like you watch film and you give an honest answer. So it's a 2-part question. One, how much do you contribute to Tua in this offense? Because I hear from certain people in your fan base, they feel like if it wasn't for Tariq and Waddle, that Tua wouldn't have this success, or Mike McDaniel. Like, the quarterback is not playing a role at all. And 2, do you think any quarterback you can just plug and play in this system? Do you feel that way?
There's a varying degree as to what I feel about this, because I think that to some degree, the Miami Dolphins offense is just a more prolific version of Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco. And we're watching Mr. Irrelevant look like a guy who absolutely belongs in the league. And yeah, is that because he has George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey? Absolutely. But you can't discount a player because of that. Do you think Patrick Mahomes has the success he does if Andy Reid isn't his coach? Say the Bears draft Patrick Mahomes back when he should have gotten drafted. Say Chicago, who had the opportunity to draft Mahomes, say they take him. You think Patrick Mahomes is who he is today if he's in Chicago? The answer is no. Patrick Mahomes' success has been, to some degree, relying upon Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and maybe the best offensive coach we've ever seen. You can't discount a player's ability to perform based on what's around him. It only amplifies it. Of course, Josh Allen's been a better quarterback since Stephon Diggs has come to the team. Plenty of people want to say Josh Allen was nothing until Stephon Diggs came to the team. Well, do you expect any quarterback in this league to succeed if he doesn't have adequate players around him? Do I think most quarterbacks could succeed right now on Miami? Absolutely. But how you're going to discount Tua who last week had, 3 incompletions on the day? What did he throw? 26 balls for nearly 400 yards? I'm sick and tired of it. I was the first person to stand up and criticize Tua when I felt like it was warranted last season. How you're criticizing him through the first 3 weeks, I'll have no idea. You have got to be honest and fair. How you're criticizing Tua early on in this season, I'll never know. Efficiency is the key, and taking advantage of what's around you is the key. Who's doing that better right now in the league than what Tua is doing? I don't think anybody.
Thank you. Go ahead, Big R.
Hey, before you go, hey Tua, ask Mr. Positive's question on the chat. He has a question. He's been trying to get it in for a minute. Pause.
So I'm sorry. I've been trying to get my question in for a minute too. I got to get Mr. Positive question in. I wanted to touch on a point you made earlier about the biggest difference from between our teams being the point in which the defenses are as far as where the level they're playing
Yeah.
at right now. Um, I would also say on the flip side that I think that a lot of the teams that you have faced are on different levels of offense, which you alluded to that we have as far as just being at a point in which you're either introducing a new offensive coordinator or new quarterback. And I just was wondering, going into this game, right, Vic Fangio was of the opinion that the last 3 games were irrelevant, so he's not even watching it or whatever. So do you feel like the past has any reflection on this particular game and matchup? And if so, do you think that there's anything either team will be able to, will be able to use from either last year or something before, like whether the Dolphins, the way they schemed against Josh Allen, or whether how you guys defended Tyreek Hill in the past? Do you think that they will draw on the past, or will this be more of we're going to see pretty much just new things from both teams in this game? Or do you think they kind of try to build off some of the things that they've had success with in the
My
past?
answer to that would be I'd like to see some stuff replicated in the past that the Bills have done. I mean, they've won 11 of the last 13 against these Dolphins, so obviously you'd like to see some sort of repetition to do exactly what the outcome has been over the last handful of games. But this is a different Miami Dolphins team, so I don't know how much the past plays into it. I also know for a damn fact that Mike McDaniel is not going to walk out there on Sunday with the same scheme that he had on display against the Bills 3 different times last year. That guy is way too creative and way too smart to do that. So I don't know how much the past is relevant here at all. And I don't really know how much it's going to be relevant moving forward as we watch this rivalry evolve, because you are watching, and I don't think it's even an argument, you are watching the 2 kings of the AFC East here for the foreseeable future. Unless the Jets can magically evolve that quarterback position, and I'm not talking about a rebirth of Rodgers next year for 1 quick season off of an ACL injury, and I'm not talking about the Patriots, who have one of the more anemic offenses in the entire league. This is where it's at right now. So you're going to see the best of the best on display every time that these two go out and face off. To me, I think that what I had just said, there's no possible way that you can look back at last season and anticipate you're going to see the same from either side. What interests me the most here, and I know the biggest talking point, I think it is fair to some degree, but there's a bit of a misconception, I think. The biggest difference right now in the way that these two teams are talked about is that Miami has played stout competition and the Bills haven't. I wonder how much that really plays into this. The Chargers are the biggest choke artists I've ever seen. Every single week, I don't know how you could possibly be an LA Chargers fan and not be on some sort of heart medication. Every single game comes down to the last play, and they almost always, even last week when they won, you got Brandon Staley going for it on his own 20-yard line up a touchdown. They do everything in their power to try to hand the game away. The offense had a day against Miami week 1, but Miami was able to pull it out late. Like I said about the Patriots, they did not have the offensive talent worth a damn to be able to keep up with Miami, but their defense kept them in that game all the way until the end. And then last week, I understand you scored 70. There's not a thing I can take away from that to criticize. But the Denver Broncos, I feel like everybody, including myself, is just waiting for them to be good. They might just be terrible. Are we willing to accept the fact that they might just be bad with Russell Wilson? Because that's all they've been. The Bills have played an Aaron Rodgers-less Jets team and lost, and they've played two of the weaker teams, I think, in the league early on here in the Raiders and the Commanders, just based on what we've seen. So I think it's irrelevant. I think you wipe away the 3 games that the Dolphins played and the 3 games that the Bills played, because this is a divisional game where I think nothing else matters as far as a contributing factor going into this one. You wipe the slate clean. We can talk all we want about what we've seen early on here. I think we're going to get a completely different showing, and what we see on Sunday is going to be very telling as to what we see from these teams going forward the rest of the year, because this, for both teams, is by far their biggest test. It's going to prove a lot as we get into the bulk of the season for both sides.
Go ahead, D1, then Big Earn.
Hey, Z-Bot. Hey, Z-Bot.
Hey, what's good, man?
Hey, how you doing? It's basically a 2-part question. What does a win or a loss do for the Bills or prove for the Bills, and what does a win or loss in your eyes do for the Dolphins? Or what does it prove, or what's the narrative that can come from out of it?
It's a great question. I think there's so much that'll be made of this, and rightfully so, because like I mentioned, is anybody anticipating the Jets being a contender for the top of the AFC East? I think that's a resounding no. And I think the Patriots are far better than advertised. They're never going to be an easy win. I mean, you guys dealt with that in week 2. Yeah, you definitely won the game. It felt in hand throughout the whole game, but they never went away. That's New England. No matter what the talent level is, they just don't go away. So I look at the Bills' schedule, and if you look post-Dolphins game here, I don't know where they find themselves in a situation where they lose until maybe the Eagles game near Thanksgiving. And I know that sounds like a homer take, but the Jaguars have not looked good at all. That's our next opponent. The Giants have been abysmal. I don't see the Patriots keeping up on offense. I don't see the Tampa Bay Bucks being able to top the Bills in prime time at home. The Bengals have been horrific. Unless they get it together, I don't see them comparing to the Bills. We know what the Broncos have been. The Jets, I dare them to try and beat the Bills twice, especially at home this time. And then comes the Eagles game. So I don't know how dire it is for the Bills, but when it comes to the division, you better believe it's a massive blow. When you look at the Dolphins' schedule, it's kind of similar. Obviously, the opponents are almost identical this year, and that, to me, is what the biggest outcome of this game is. I think both these teams are capable of winning the majority of their games for the foreseeable future here post this game. So despite what the Bills might be able to do, win or lose after this game, despite what the Dolphins might be able to do, win or lose this game, whoever comes out of this one on top, based on what we expect from them going forward and the opponents that they're facing, this is going to be a major determining factor in the division, in the overall division win and the overall 1 seed. And I think right now, these two teams are 100% competing for the overall 1 seed. I think we're going to look back at this game come January, and we're going to realize that this had way more of an implication on the outcome than people wanted to give it credit for, just because it was in week 4. You look at the Dolphins schedule and the Bills schedule. I mean, I'm looking at the Dolphins right now. They're not losing to the Giants. They're not losing to the Panthers. They're going to give an Eagles a hell of a game. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to continue to win for both of these teams. So when you continuously keep winning, to me, it's going to come down to who won these head-to-heads. And this one's going to have a lot more to it than I think people want to realize, just because it's so early here in the season.
Thank you. Great answer.
Big Iron, go ahead.
Thank you, my friend. So my question is this: the single biggest factor in this game to me is on who wins and who loses is, are the Bills able to put pressure? Are they going to be able to get to Tua Tagovailoa? Are they going to be able to get the hits on him? Are they going to be able to get the hurries? The Dolphins, Tua in particular, has been exceptional this year, maybe as good as any quarterback ever, at getting the ball out quickly and really making pressure on him a non-factor. The offensive line has performed well. So my question is, do you think that the Bills are going to be able to get pressure on Tua? And if not, do you see any scenario in which they don't get pressure and they still win the game, other than a bunch of?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and to me, it goes back to just a couple of the things we were talking about earlier. When you talk about this game and how many storylines there are, to me, this is one of the more significant ones, and it goes back to what I was saying when I said which top unit is going to be able to exploit the other one, because right now you're looking at a Dolphins team who, like you mentioned, I think Tua's taken a sack on 3% of dropbacks, which is the league's best. No one's touching him. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Based on what is being schemed up, based on his ability to get rid of the ball, it has been virtually impossible to get after him. And because of that, that's why this offense has been so efficient. The Bills, on the other hand, we're coming off a game against the Commanders with 9 sacks, 4 forced turnovers, maybe it was 5 forced turnovers. Yeah, 4 interceptions and a fumble recovery. Do I expect that against the Dolphins? I certainly don't. But that, to me, is where another point where you look at this game and you could look at it afterwards and say it came down to that. Who's going to get the advantage? The team in the Bills that have had one of the best pressure rates in the league through the first 3 weeks, despite having one of the least amount of blitz packages executed by this defense. They're getting pressure in a base personnel, just taking 4 into the quarterback, which is, of course, is ideal. That's exactly what you want. The Bills have not been blitzing much, but they've been getting after the quarterback on a consistent basis. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, no one's touching Tua, and that's mainly because his ability to get the ball out is just lights out. So I think we're going to probably see some sort of middle ground there, where I think the Bills do get to Tua a bit more than he's seen through the first 3 weeks. But I also don't think they're going to be able to get to him enough to where we see what they did against the Raiders or what they did against the Commanders. Now, the biggest factor in that is going to be when they do get to Tua. Is that going to force him into making mistakes? If he makes mistakes based on them getting to him, that could flip the game. But if they do get to him and he takes a couple of lickings and it doesn't overly affect the offense, he's not throwing picks, he's not fumbling it when he gets hit, he's not taking a ton of self-inflicted sacks by holding onto the ball, that's going to be key. I think the Bills can win this game if they don't get to him a ton, but it's going to come down to their ability to stop the run, in my opinion. Because Mostert, like I keep mentioning, I think he is the unsung hero that no one's talking about on this Dolphins team. Everybody wants to talk about Waddle, Tua, and Hill. I think Mostert has been terrific, and he's certainly been terrific against these Bills. So if they can't get to Tua, the one way I do see the Bills getting out of here with a victory, despite not being able to inflict pressure on the quarterback, is going to be the ability to stop the run game. If they're not going to stop the run, and if they're not going to get to Tua, no, I do not anticipate a scenario where the Bills get out of here victorious unless their offense puts up 40. The only way I see them winning in that scenario is if this game comes down to a 45-42 finish and neither defense can do a damn thing and it basically just comes down to who has the ball last. That's the only scenario I see where the Bills can get out of here with a win if their defense can't stop any of these weapons that the Dolphins have.
Z-Bot, really quick,
Hey,
I just want to thank you for your
ask
time.
him though,
Hold on, really
Fez.
quick. Hold on. Z-Bot, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming through. You've been very objective. You seem very knowledgeable, and we really appreciate you and your takes and everything you said about this game. I just want to know, do you have time for a few more questions? Are we still good with you? Z-Bot, you got to
It's
unmute.
on mute.
Sorry, you got to
Uh,
unmute.
quick announcement: Jalen Waddle's out of concussion protocol.
I was just about to say that.
I knew he wasn't
Z-Bot,
going to miss this game, fellas. I knew he was
are you
not
good?
missing
Are
this
you
one.
good? Are you good for a few
Yeah,
more
absolutely, man.
questions?
Let's keep rolling.
All
I
right,
love
so
this, no doubt.
really,
Steve
really,
was next, and Wally. If you
hold on,
got one, Chad.
really quick. We did have an audience question that I wanted to ask
Sure.
you, but before I get into that, I just wanted to say, for everyone here, local Miami, we are having a watch party, 5 Reasons watch party for the Dolphins and Bills game at Biscayne Brewery. It'll be starting at 11:30. Your first beer is free if you're in a group. So if you want to gather with some friends and get some free beers and, just have a place to watch the game, it's really nice. Great place. If you guys want to have somewhere to watch the game, go ahead and check that out. And as well as we have our playback this Saturday at 5:30. We'll be doing our playback as well, breaking down the game, get into all the good stuff, do some film breakdowns and some good stuff. We got some good stuff for you. Well, it's going to be really entertaining. And really thank you guys for coming through and supporting us. And it's been a great space, man. But I'm going to go ahead and before I get into the hands, the question I was asked is that you guys are giving up currently 5.9 yards per carry. It seemed like the Jets had a ton of success running the ball against you guys week one, but in the last two games, you guys had pretty much blown the teams out, and it seems like they kind of got away from running the football. So, do you think that the run defense is actually as stout as it's shown statistically, or that it's just been just kind of the style of the matchups, more so playing into where you guys are ranked currently?
I don't know if there's any way to know because last week you look at the numbers and the Commanders had 7 yards a carry, but they also only ran it 10 times. And that's back to what you had just said. There's a blowout at hand. You got to give up on running the ball. There's no way you're going to be able to stay in the game if you're going to keep running the clock. So you look at the numbers. I don't know if you're able to tell whether or not it was any good or not. You can maybe chalk it up to the Bills not anticipating the run because of the amount that they were up. But, 10 rushes for 7 yards, it was what it was. I just don't know how much you can take away from that. They where I will say that they really shined was against the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, at least we thought, coming into this season, was unarguably one of the best running backs in the league, and they held him to negative 2 yards. That has never happened to an all-pro running back before. So that was an extraordinary performance against him. But once again, back to your point, they had ran away with that game by the third quarter, and they had to bail on the run game as well. Now to the Jets game, they had one massive run with Breece Hall, if you remember. It was about a 70-yard run that got them down to the red zone.
Right,
that was
right.
the bulk of their rush yards in that game. Outside of that, they did hold them in check, but Zach Wilson was in the game. They were anticipating the ball being ran because they're not anticipating Zach Wilson dicing them up down the field. So to answer your question, I don't know if we know. And that's why this game, to me, I look at Raheem Mostert to be a massive factor for both sides. If the Bills can stop him, advantage Bills. If he can get the game going, advantage Dolphins. I don't know if we have an adequate answer right now, though, to answer your question, because I just don't think we've seen enough. To me, this is going to be the ultimate test here.
Awesome, appreciate you. Really quick, I see we got some people that came up. We have a rotation right now, so feel free to raise your hand if you do have a question, if you want to jump in. Let's go to. I'm not sure who was next as far as the hands. Do you guys know
It
who
was
was next?
Steve, then Wally.
Steve and Wally. Go ahead.
Push me to the end of the line.
You was. Steve had his hand up for a while.
I kind of have I have a statement and then kind of a question. The statement was we kind of alluded it to a few times, and you've said it a few times with the importance of this game, and I think the league kind of did this on accident, not realizing that this is kind of how this ended up. I believe this is going to be the most important game the two of us play this year, just because the next game we play is the last game of the year, and I honestly believe that by that point, the first seed's going to be figured out, and I don't think that game is going to be anybody wanting to risk their playoff injuries.
Bro, French, what are you doing,
I already
man?
got it. I already
Come
got it.
on,
No, it
man.
was. I mean, hold on. It's hey,
I didn't
listen.
bring nobody up. That was too messy.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I thought he was a Bills fan that just wanted to ask a question. I didn't know he was gonna come up here and be on that. So, but it's good. Hey, you know what? I like that. Embrace that. Take that in. You know what I mean? And let's
Hey,
use it
the
as fuel.
rivalry's back, man. You got to embrace that.
It
I
is.
love that, man. I love it.
It is.
Hey, Connor Williams is back at practice today. Travis Wingfield just tweeted.
Z-Bob,
Appreciate
I
you,
just
Jay
got one
Bryant.
question. Z-Bob,
Hold on,
why
I
is
never even
Matt
got to
Milano?
finish.
Oh,
Damn.
Damn. But no, but basically, do you feel that week 18 is going to really matter at come that game? And you'd also said something. We kind of alluded to something about the offensive line and the pressure getting to Tua. We had the best offensive line that you guys have faced was the Raiders, which are as of right now ranked around I think they're the eighth or the ninth best offensive line in football. Now the Dolphins also, and this is why I don't put a lot of stock into a lot of this stuff when talking this early in the season. We haven't faced, I don't think, as prolific as a pass rush as the Bills could potentially give us, other than the blitz heavy Patriots. Do you feel that the Dolphins might really truly give the Bills the best challenge at that pass rush, since against the Raiders you had 0 sacks?
Damn, we didn't play against Uche and Judon and Khalil Mack and Bosa. Like that never happened. Like damn, Steve.
That defense is stout.
No, I just don't think they're not the same. I don't think they're the same caliber as they were a few years ago.
Well, I think the biggest difference there, and yes, of course, the line is a major factor, but the difference there between facing a top 10 offensive line on the Raiders and facing a top 10 offensive line on the Dolphins is that Jimmy Garoppolo is behind center and Devontae Adams and nobody else is out there, making plays. And when you take Josh Jacobs out of the equation, which they did, what else are they going? They can't do anything. They're not capable of moving the ball. When you take away what they want to do, and that's run the ball, they don't necessarily have any other answers. The biggest difference here is you not only have that same caliber, if not better, offensive line with the Dolphins, but you also have a quarterback that's much more athletic, much better at being able to get the ball out of his hands, and much better weapons around him. You probably have two of the best overall weapons in the entire league catching the ball from him. And you have running backs that are capable of putting up numbers that we haven't seen since 1960 last week. So that to me is the biggest difference. And once again, it comes down to these little crevices within the game that you take a look at. And that's what really magnifies this one into being such an awesome game, is because there's so many little things like that. And to me, that's one of them. The offensive line has looked terrific for the Dolphins. The Bills' defensive front has looked terrific as well. Which one of these guys is going to live up to the billing? Because something's going to have to give here. Both these units have looked terrific. One of them is going to have to out-edge the other. And to me, that could have a major factor in deciding the outcome of this game.
Go ahead, French, and then we're gonna go Bartek. I hope I pronounced it
My
correctly,
man,
sir.
my
Let me
man
know.
Bartek. Yes,
And
sir.
then we'll go to Jay Bryan, and then Drew.
Hey, Z-Bot, who is the dirtiest player on the Bills, and why is it Matt Milano?
Oh, my God. Listen. This is so tough to deal with because I understand where you guys are coming from. And this is the one thing that annoys me about biases within fan bases, is because if the shoe was on the other foot.
Oh, come on, Z-Bot.
No, listen to me.
Come on, Z-Bot.
No, listen. If Matt Milano was on the Dolphins and he did that to the Bills, the entire Bills fan base would be calling Matt Milano dirty. They absolutely would. That, to me, is what's annoying here, is because I don't necessarily think that hit was dirty. But to that point, if it happened
Are you talking about the after the play push?
It was a push that I think against any other quarterback would not have had as significant of an impact as it did against Tua. That's just the way I saw it.
Oh, you're talking about like after the
It was well after the play though.
Listen,
like it was like 2 or 3 steps. Like
these things, as you watch now, I mean, you got Mac Jones punching guys in the balls. I mean, this stuff. This is all of a sudden, unfortunately, a common occurrence. Matt Milano, to me, is just one of the hardest nosed players out there. And I think he's just so delved into the game at times that unfortunately you get that. But this is where I do understand where you guys are coming from. Do I think
You're showing your bias, Z-Bot. You're showing your bias.
I was gonna say, man.
My bias flips.
Yeah.
My bias flips.
I was about to say he started the show. I said we were biased, and he ended
But here's where my bias flips, though, because this is where I agree with you guys. If Matt Milano was on the Dolphins and did that to Buffalo, you'd have the whole Buffalo fan base saying exactly what you guys are saying. So do I maybe think it's not dirty because I'm a Bills fan? Absolutely. I can't deny that. Maybe that's contributing. Maybe I'm looking at it with a bit of blinders on. I'm not entirely sure. I also, in my opinion, I didn't think Minkah Fitzpatrick's hit on Chubb was dirty, but that's a massive debate as well right now. So that's where I might look at my bias trying to set aside. I got buddies ripping me apart for thinking that wasn't dirty, and that's been a whole debate too. I just don't know what Minkah Fitzpatrick was supposed to do in that situation. To your point, was it late on Milano? Yeah, but I don't think there was any malicious intent, nor do I think that there's ever really malicious intent on the majority of these plays where people tend to think that there are. But what I will agree with,
Z-Bot, you know what you sound like right
let me
now?
hear
You
it.
sound like the Bengals fans that used to defend Vontae Perfect.
there are
That's
Oh,
what you sound like right now.
Perfect
That's
was
real
breaking
similar.
guys' legs in the pile. That's a little bit of a difference there.
Hey, Zeba, I've told Chad this before. I'm like, Milano, the way that I describe Milano is he's the type of player that you hate if he's not on your team, but you
That's
kind
such a good
you
point.
love him if he's on your team.
That's
And
exactly
I
how
put
I
him in
feel
that
about Tyreek
I
Hill.
don't necessarily put him in the Vontez Burfict category, but I definitely put him in the Ndamukong Suh category for sure.
I think that is such a good point, what you just said there, because that is exactly how I feel about Tyreek Hill as well. Because it's one of those guys that is like, for me, Milano on this defense, if Milano's not on this defense, I don't think people realize just how much of a factor he contributes to just how good this defense is. He's so underrated. He's not a household name. He is really the heart and soul of this defense, in my opinion. I look at a guy like Tyreek Hill. I don't know if Miami is capable of being this prolific without a guy like that. And that's one of those guys to me where I look at him and I think I mean, anything to have a guy like that on my team. And if he's not, I hate him. And it's not necessarily, I don't hate him because of anything else other than the fact that he's so good. That's how I think about Patrick Mahomes all the time. There's not a thing about Patrick Mahomes that you can really pick out that you hate. He's like an awesome dude. I just hate him just because of how damn good he is and what he's done to my Bills over the last several seasons.
I hate Jackson Mahomes via Patrick Mahomes.
Hey,
Yeah.
Z-Bot, like, well, we got some of this, but like French would say, when you're out being dirty on your girlfriend, you're cheating. You're not being malicious towards her. You're just out being dirty. So you're not. It might not be malicious, but it's still dirty.
Listen, I totally think it's fair to say that it was dirty. I think that that's fair to say, and I have to admit I cannot look at that objectively because I think that the way I saw it, it's a no. But I get why you guys think that, and I don't know if there's necessarily a right or wrong answer there. I completely understand what you guys.
He does make me nervous, Zeba. He really does.
Hold on, we got Drew, then Bartek, then J. Rod, then 305. Go ahead, Drew. Drew.
If Drew might be working, if
Go
so,
ahead, Bartek.
Bartek. Yeah.
Bartek.
Yo, what's good, Z-Bot?
What's good, baby?
How you doing? Yeah, I'm excited for this game, but I'm just curious, honestly. So when I think about like the Bills versus the Dolphins, right? I mean, the last 10 games, we obviously dominated most of them, and I think you guys held us to less than 25 points one time, which was last year's game, and even that game, we had more than double of your total yards. So I'm just curious, what was the Dolphins' approach? The Bills rarely ever lose at home. We've lost probably 5 games in the last regular season games in the last 3 seasons combined, I think. One to Kansas City, one to the opener at the Steelers, and one blowout to the Colts, and and Vikings that game, whatever. But I'm curious what you guys think the McDaniel's approach is from a standpoint of like, okay, do we go and try and outscore these Bills? Like, they're going to put up points on us regardless, or at least yards. Or is it?
Hold on, did you say we only held you on the 25 points one time? Is that what you said?
Hold on.
Yeah, in the last 10 games, I'm pretty sure it was only the 19 score when you guys won 21-19, and we had almost 500 yards total. And you
all
guys
3 games last year were won by 3 points. So how?
No. I mean, I understand that. I'm not saying that.
Hold
I'm just saying in terms of scoring. I'm saying, do you think the Dolphins try and go like, okay, we're gonna utilize our momentum in the run game in terms of try and keep the Bills off of possession as much as possible, or is it more so like we're just going to air it out and try and keep up and just go
Try to keep
punch
up.
for punch?
Really
Try to
quick,
keep up.
hold on, man. Goodness gracious, bro. Guys, relax. out of respect for our guest, I would love to keep it the questions more so for Zbot. But Mike McDaniel has become accustomed to doing things that haven't been done before. I'm not sure if you watched the game recently. We just did something that hasn't been done in a long time. We are on pace to try to do something as far as win a playoff game, and we haven't done it in a long time. Tua just won the AFC Offensive Player of the Month, first Dolphin to do that in 30 years. Like, I think you can't consistently rely on the past as a indicator of the future and how things will be able to go. And as a fan, I understand you that you want to hold on to that, but I think you have to objectively let that go and everything that's happened go in the past and look at this game as a completely clean slate, because those teams that you face during that win streak are not the team that you're playing today. We were signing guys off the street and playing them, and we were tanking. We had a bunch of things that have gone on that are on record. That is not a fan thing. It's not a made up thing. These are things on record that we are actually suffering for, right, to this day. So to that point, I just want to say, like, I don't think you can bring that into this game, but going forward, I just try to keep the questions more towards Z-Bot. I'm trying to be respectful of his time, and we do have hands, but I do appreciate your question, Bartek. But go ahead, Drew, are you there? No, or can we go to Jay Bryan?
Well, I guess he's busy, but so
No, Jay Bryan.
all right, Zbot. Question. Let's use week 15 of last year as the barometer for this question, and I would like to know, in your opinion, what are some of the real measurable improvements in the Buffalo Bills since week 15 of last year, in that 3-point win on the road, when the Dolphins were on the road, at the home game, I should say, I guess, for the Buffalo Bills and for the Miami Dolphins. Where do you see the Bills having improved, and where do you see the Dolphins having improved? For example, it's statistically and very well documented that our offensive line is almost completely reversed course from the atrocious play that they fielded last year. Where do you see improvements from Buffalo and Miami?
Z-Bot, you're on mute.
Is he talking? Because I was gonna say I couldn't hear him either.
Sorry, fellas. I forget that it goes on mute when when other people talk. That's my bad. But I thought that was an awesome question. So there's a couple things to me on both sides that I found to be different. Starting with the Bills, one of the more noticeable things through the first 3 weeks here that we as Bills fans have definitely liked is less of an emphasis on Josh Allen running the ball nonstop in order for these Bills to move the ball down the field. If you go back to that Week 15 game in particular, that was 70% of the reason the Bills wind up winning that game. Josh Allen wound up putting the Superman cape on and running the ball down the field consistently in order for this Bills offense to get a groove going, to get the ball down the field and ultimately put that game away. The Bills have kind of veered away from that a little bit, which is necessary, because the more you're putting Josh Allen in those situations, the more he's susceptible to getting injured. And we all know that if he goes down, the Bills season goes down with it. So we've loved the ability for Ken Dorsey to scheme things up that do not necessarily entail constant rushing from Josh Allen. And last week was a great example. He only ran the ball 3 times, but he had 46 yards. We'll sign up for that all day. Last year, you were seeing similar stat lines on about 8 to 10 carries, and that's just not what we want right now, because it's a long season. The Bills have to be able to maintain his health. They've done a good job at doing that. Consequently, they have filled that gap with a run game we're not used to seeing post LaShawn McCoy. James Cook right now is the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL. They drafted him second round a season ago, and they did not incorporate him into this offense at all. And when they did give him opportunity, there were flashes there, and we were pounding the table to get more and more, and it just never came. They never allowed him to fully bake into the offense. And when they got rid of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, we all knew it was going to be James Cook's time to shine. And he's coming off back-to-back games with 95-plus yards, and he's looked terrific. And he's also been a factor in the pass game as well. So I think an improvement there is clearly been the Bills' ability to run the ball. And overall, what I've seen through the first 3 weeks, outside of week 1, just because that was more of Josh inflicting it on himself than any outside factor inflicting his issues upon him, the Bills have been much better at taking what is being given to them over the last 2 weeks. As we talked about earlier, the goal is more than likely, by the Dolphins or any opponent, to get Josh Allen to force himself into turnovers and mistakes. Lately, ever since we saw maybe the worst performance he's ever had and a clear media outcry, and I'm guessing a stern conversation in the coaching room, ever since then, we have seen Josh slow it down and take intermediate passing. The Bills have not been great at moving the ball down the field in intermediate passing through the middle of the field and on short routes post Cole Beasley. Ever since Cole Beasley left, that slot presence has yet to be filled. The Bills have done a real good job the last couple of weeks at taking what is being given to them in the middle of the field and in short yardage situations. And it's turned into 38 points and 37 points in back-to-back weeks. And it's also turned into a major differential in the time of possession. When you're not chucking the ball down the field every other play, funny enough, you wind up holding on to the ball longer, and that results in a much better odd to get a victory. And I love what we've seen out of them in that department over the last couple of weeks. So overall, I think there's the improvements for the Bills. I've also liked what we've seen out of Dorsey through the first 3 weeks as compared to what we saw last year. He was a rookie offensive coordinator last year, still trying to find his footing. I think we've seen a better version of Ken Dorsey through the first 3 weeks here as well. For the Miami Dolphins, your point is exactly spot on, and that has to be the biggest improvement. And I think it's the most underrated aspect of any team in the NFL. It's the offensive line. When an offense is humming, no one wants to give the credit to the offensive line. When you have Hill, when you have Tua, when you have Waddle, those are the guys that are filling the seats. It's not the guys in the trenches, but we all know the trenches is where the games are won. The Dolphins have had a major improvement in that department, and you've noticed the fruits of that labor. They have been the best offense through the first 3 weeks in the entire league, unarguably. So that has got to be their biggest improvement. But I think also outside of that, it's Tua. It's Tua's decision-making, and it's Tua's ability to trust the game plan and stick with it. Outside of a couple of throws where he's just tossed it deep and when it's been unnecessary and it's been underthrown, Tua is just doing exactly what I was talking about with the Bills. He's taking what's being given to him, and what's being given to him is a scheme that is opening up 2 of the more athletic guys in the entire league to get wide open, catch the ball in the flat, and gobble up yards. Tua has been incredible as far as his decision-making has been concerned, and the accuracy has been off the charts. Like I mentioned earlier, last week's stat line, you cannot get better than that. And throughout time, it was off the charts. So there's a clear improvement in the offensive line, and I think that, of course, has resulted in a clear improvement in Tua's overall ability to make the right read, get the ball out, and have what has to be, I haven't looked, but he's got to have one of the best completion percentages in the NFL so far.
Tip 305.
What's up, fins up, Bills Mafia? I wish people would stop bringing up the past as if it's any indication of what is on the field this Sunday, because every team changes 30 to 40% every year. So a team from 3 years ago barely has any players on it as of today. And also, Tua, like, we got to stop saying that he's like, you just mentioned that they're eating up yak and whatever. Like, he's throwing chunk plays consistently down the field. Like, he's like middle of the pack or even below that as far as yak goes.
Oh, for sure.
And I think what do you think was your guys' biggest, like, how do I say, your biggest problem with Cincinnati as far as that playoff game went? Because I think you guys weren't getting pressure, right? And Burrow was able to dice you guys up.
I'll tell you what the biggest problem in that game was, and it was just flat out not showing up. There was zero effort. That game was over on the first snap. I have never seen, and I don't know if it was a culmination of all of the things the Bills had dealt with throughout the year. There was like 7 or 8 outside factors that seemed to just incrementally pile onto these guys, and it all seemed to come to roost in that game because that game was over after the first quarter, and it was unwatchable. They did not show up worth a damn. The effort level was bare minimum at best. Josh Allen was trying to overcompensate for that, and therefore had a bad game. The defense didn't show up. Really, you could point the finger at anybody in that game, and I don't think you'd have a wrong answer. It was just so bad. To me, looking at that game, like you mentioned, when you're talking about the past and how it's not contributing to right now, I hope to God that game is not a game you can point to and relate it to what we're seeing moving forward here. Because if so, the Bills have far more issues than just facing the Miami Dolphins this weekend. And I think, we've seen them vastly improve as far as performance is concerned from that game. But if we're talking about that game in particular, you could just tell right after the first couple of drives that they were not going to hang into that game at all, and that's exactly what happened. So when you're getting the full effort out of this team, and it's tough to say we haven't early on here, they're definitely one of the tougher outs in the league. But in that particular game, you see what happens when when the talent level on the opposite side of the field is equal to yours and you aren't playing as hard. It results in a loss almost every time.
Yeah, I think that was like probably your guys' biggest test as far as like an offense compared to ours outside of week 15 and the wild card game.
That's true. Yeah, for sure.
And I think last year's Cincinnati's O-line wasn't as good as ours is at this current moment with Isaiah Wynn at left guard. And just like peeking a little bit past this game, like we know, all right, if we lose this game, if the Dolphins lose this game, we're humble a little bit, but we're still in a good spot at 3-1. You guys catch up with 3 wins. But if you guys lose and drop 0-2 in the division, and now we're peeking ahead, we have the Giants and the Panthers, we could potentially be 6-0 with a stranglehold on the division.
Oh, I would guarantee that. If the Dolphins beat the Bills, I would bet my life on 6-0 going into the Eagles. That to me is why it's so big this weekend. It's to me it's a borderline. There's shades of playoff type. There's shades of playoff type atmosphere in this game come Sunday because of the amount that I think's on it. I really think it's that big for both sides.
And then my last question is, I don't want to keep holding the mic, but my last question is, what is Bernard's 40 time? Because I saw 4.8, and he plays way faster than that. Because I know Tremaine Edmonds, he's like 6'5", runs a 4.5. That guy was a monster. I was watching the Week 15 game, and he made a play on Tyreek Hill, like over the middle, that Patrick Surtain made this past weekend that not a lot of players make, and Tyreek's out of there for like a 60-yard touchdown if he doesn't make that tackle.
Yeah, I just
Tremaine could stick with him. Bernard.
No, I don't. But that's the difference. Is I think what you lack in size, because Tremaine Edmonds is a massive human being. He is a huge human being. So what you lack in size, maybe compared to Tremaine Edmonds with Terrell Bernard, you gain with exactly what you're talking about. I just looked it up. He had a 4.8 40 time. He does not necessarily look like your stereotypical linebacker. But I think that is also a testament to how the game has evolved here as well. It's not the days where you have Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher ripping someone's head off over the middle of the field. It's more so what we're looking at this coming weekend, and that's, can you contain the top athletes in the league over the middle without the ability to play a style of football that's been relegated out of the league? It's no longer knocking people's heads off in the middle of the field like it used to be. It's about playing tight coverage and keeping up with your guy. So I think that's where the benefit has been so far with Bernard. A lot of people were frustrated with Tremaine Edmonds last year and his ability to be able to cover in the middle of the field. And my answer to anybody who's asked me what I've thought about Terrell Bernard so far has been this. The Bills fan base, it will be the first people on earth to tell you the second someone's being noticeably missed. So through the first 3 weeks, I have not heard Tremaine Edmonds' name get brought up once. And people will ask me what I've thought about Terrell Bernard. And I say, well, that's my answer to you right there. he's been more than serviceable. The AFC Defensive Player of the Week this past week. He's been good enough to where you don't even think about Tremaine Edmonds and his loss on this team.
His game speed is way quicker than 4.8, but I would say that size is going to be missed when we do start running the ball because
I agree, and that's where you rely on Milano. I mean,
and when
that's where Milano. That's where you really rely on him. He currently, and I just saw this stat. I retweeted it. This once again, when we keep talking about these individual storylines for this game, obviously one being Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle versus the Bills defense and what they've looked like so far. Dov Kleiman earlier today, he tweeted out the lowest QB rating allowed by linebackers. Milano's allowing a 28 QBR when he's been thrown to. Terrell Bernard's allowing a 38 QBR when he's been thrown to, and that's 1 and 2 in the league so far. And we know, obviously. Hold on. Let me. You know where I'm going with this. I understand.
You know where I'm going with it. You know where I was gonna go.
I understand it's been Sam Howell and Jimmy G and Zach
Thank
Wilson.
you.
I get that.
Thank you.
I get that. But I will say, if you're looking for a core to be able to do it or to be able to at least try and do it to some capacity, you can't ask for much more than what the Bills have done thus far. We'll see if they'll be able to keep it up. But a much tougher task than anything they faced yet, that's for sure.
Look at number 9 on that list for me.
Yeah, that's Andrew Van Ginkel. Appreciate it. Hey, Zebot, I'm not sure where you are as far as time. Are you still good for a couple more questions?
I can do it. I can do a couple more before I got to head back to work. For sure.
All right, so we got Jay, Brian, and Oos. We'll wrap it up with. Just want to thank everybody for coming. Appreciate the support. Zebot, want to thank you again for your time. Again, just want to let everybody know, watch party this Sunday at Biscayne Brewery. This Sunday, if you need any addresses or any additional information, feel free to reach out. 5 Reasons got a special thing going on. You show up with the group, you're going to get a free beer. Go ahead and show up and show out, man. You guys have a great time. And as well as we have our playback this Saturday at 5:30. Just wanted to go ahead and remind you guys of that as well. Thank everybody else for coming through. Appreciate all the great questions. Go ahead, Oos, and then we'll go Jay Bryan. Then go ahead and wrap it up. Z-Bot, man. Appreciate you again.
Yeah, my pleasure, fellas. It's been fun as hell. I loved it.
And thank you again, Z-Bot, for joining us and taking time out of your day for your insight. My one question is, yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. Well, we've been told that Daniel's system, the potency, is a plug and play system. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that in the context.
Did you break it up for everyone, or is it just me?
I got him good.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I just wanted to know, what is your thoughts on that as far as people believing that plug and play system, as far as the quarterback position is concerned?
I mean, yeah. They also said that Brady was a system quarterback for 20 years. I think anytime you're seeing success, people try to justify it and they try to find ways to discredit it. Is it plug and play? Maybe. Who the hell cares? They scored 70 points. That's what I don't understand about stuff like that. When people say it's plug and play, they say the 49ers is plug and play. They say the Dolphins is plug and play. Okay, so what if it is? They're the best offense in the league through the first 3 weeks. Maybe it is. I would venture to say the primary reason they're saying that is because Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback. The reason they're saying that about the Niners is because their previous quarterbacks have been Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. If you were to put in Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Burrow, and they were in that offense, no one's calling it a plug-and-play offense. I think that is the reason why you're hearing that. And to me, if I'm you guys and I'm a fan of the Dolphins, it wouldn't bother me one bit. Who cares? Because I know the second someone starts telling me it's a plug-and-play offense, it means they're trying to find a way to justify the success it's had so far. So either way, whether it is or it isn't, who cares? It's been the best offense in the league for the first month here.
Thank you.
I would say also to that point, in 2017, Tua was cutting his teeth in an offense that was orchestrated by a man who I think we're all familiar with, Brian Daboll. prior to Steve Sarkistan or whatever.
Sarkisian, yeah,
Sarkisian. So yeah, I mean, Tua seemed to he seemed to flourish in that system as well.
Did he cut off?
He might have, but I think what he was trying to say is, like, you're talking about system and how quarterbacks benefit from it. And everybody wants to use the system as a way to either they want to use the system as a way to either justify why a quarterback they think is good is playing bad, or they want to use the system to justify why a quarterback they think is bad is playing good. I just never understood it. If you want to succeed in this league, you need good coaching and players executing it. So
right,
that's exactly what they're doing.
It's a little silly to bring up anything past the Mike McDaniel regime, and if you want to go from the Mike McDaniel regime forward, then you would say 2-1 would be the record against Tua Tagovailoa, and one of those coming against the third string quarterback in the playoffs. But my question specifically though, Z-Bot, is what do you believe to be the game plan along the defensive line when even a free rusher doesn't seem to be able to get to a Tagovailoa before the pass comes out? I believe he's averaging less than 2.5 seconds to throw, just based on the offensive scheme, the great offensive line play aside.
I don't think it's going to vary beyond much of what we've seen early here. I don't anticipate the Bills blitzing Tua very often for that exact reason. The more you're going to dedicate to trying and getting after him, the less, of course, you're able to dedicate to those on the receiving end of the ball. And when he's getting rid of the ball that quickly, to me, it's a fool's errand to send additional guys at him and then allow yourself to open up the field for Waddle and Hill. To me, I think they stick what they've been doing. Like I mentioned earlier, they have one of the best pressure rates in the league thus far without sending much blitz. I don't know why they would differentiate from that in this game. To me, if they did, it would just make no sense. The more you're going to send your personnel towards Tua, the more I think if he's able to get rid of the ball, you're going to regret it. So they're going to stick with that base personnel to try to get pressure and hope that they can. But to me, this is mostly going to come down to the ability to mitigate the run game and the impact that has on this defense, and also try and mitigate the amount that Tua is able to find Tyreek Hill in open space and get chunk yardage that way. However they do that, like I keep saying, easier said than done. I just don't anticipate the game plan being centered around trying to solely get after Tua each and every snap, because I just don't know how that winds up benefiting you in the end. Eventually, he's going to be able to get rid of the ball fast enough, and I just think it burns you if you continuously try to keep going back to that well.
Does the Miami Dolphins run game concern me?
Does the Miami Dolphins run game concern me? Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does. Like I said, last year in that Week 15 game, Tyreek had, 80 yards and a touchdown impact on the game. Waddle had only 3 catches, but 113 yards and a touchdown in that game. And despite that, I still felt the biggest factor in that game was Raheem Mostert running all over this team. And I also think in a game where you have 2 offensive heavyweights and 2 quarterbacks that are capable of putting up an insane amount of points, the run game on both sides is going to be massive in this one. Time of possession is going to be crucial here. The less the other quarterback has the ability to score on you, the better, especially in a game like this. And I look at what Raheem Mostert has done early in the season here, and I've also looked at what he's done against the Bills in the past, and I am absolutely looking at him to be one of the guys that is going to be a factor in this game either way. If the Bills are able to mitigate his impact, it's going to be a big advantage to Buffalo. If Mostert's going to be able to get it going close to what he did last year, even a fraction of what he did last week, it's going to be a real rough day for that Bills defense trying to find a way to shut down Miami's offense.
Last one, Z. What is Josh Allen's superpower?
Hey, yo.
What is his superpower? Oh man.
Like when we talk about Tua, we talk about the keyhole accuracy. We talk about the anticipation. We talk about the touch on the ball. Pause.
Hey, yeah.
I think his superpower is also identical to what his kryptonite is, ironically enough. His superpower is the ability to extend plays. Like you saw last week or 2 weeks ago, for example. There's a touchdown to Khalil Shakir in the red zone where he's just dead to rights. He's got a guy in his face. He's about to get sacked. He's fallen to his knees, and he flicks it sidearm on his hip, dead on to Khalil Shakir for a touchdown. And you're thinking a handful of guys are capable of doing that. But at the same time, he tried doing similar style plays against the Jets in week 1, and he threw 4 picks. So I always say there's times with Allen where unfortunately you got to take the good with the bad, because the superpower is extending plays and making unbelievably highlight reel type throws. But that also can lead to a couple of decisions now and again that really leave you head scratching. So a lot of Allen is good with the bad. Luckily for us, the good, as far as a majority is concerned, has outweighed the bad. But when you watch a game like the Jets game, that's where you start to get concerned when there's no good to be had and those style of plays are turning into nothing but turnovers.
So the Dolphins win if the Bills win if, and can we get a prediction?
Yeah, man. Oh, so this one, man, as far as prediction is concerned, I don't even know if Vegas knows what to do with this game. That line's staying at 3, and that is a weird, fishy line to me, man. I tend to avoid betting on the Bills to begin with, just because, for instance, I'll give you an example. They were giving out like free credit on DraftKings over the offseason, and as soon as the lines had opened, I had placed like a 5-team parlay. And of course, I put the Bills in money line to beat the Jets, and that's on Monday night. And of course, it's a $100 free bet, and the parlay is like plus 1,500. So if it hits, you win $1,500 on nothing. And of course, every game in the Sunday window hits. And now I'm going into this Bills game already anxious and nervous to begin with because it's week 1, and I got that riding on it, and we all know what happened. So I try my best to avoid betting on them, just because I don't need any additional anxiety compared to what I already have on a weekly basis.
So, Z-Bot, the last part of the show is we typically make a bet with our guests. Either
all right, we'll save it then. We'll save it.
Either a Navi bet or a push-up bet. What can you stomach?
What's the first one? What was the first one you said?
Either a Navi bet where you switch your Avi to ours for a week, or you could do push-ups.
Well, how many push-ups are we talking here? Because I got to tell you, I can't remember the last time I've done a damn push-up.
Wally, how many push-ups are we doing?
Non-stop. 25 nonstop. 25 nonstop. It's light work.
25 nonstop. Okay, what's the bet?
It has to be live so we can clown you. Because if we see you cheating, we gonna make fun of you.
No question.
You can edit the tape. You can edit the tape and all that. Talking about, I think there's a one take.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen. I gotta
have Z-Bot. We have the suicide mission, which is you're gonna have to just send us a video of you taking the whole Sprite can. You could do the suicide mission.
Yeah, taking a 16-ounce Sprite.
The suicide mission is a cold Sprite can. It has to be like barely, like almost
and it has to be cold.
I
you have to drink it.
I know damn well that'll burn your esophagus to the point of an ER.
Oh, I know. I lost the bet week 1.
Listen, my fat ass cannot do 25 push-ups, so sign me up for the Sprite bet. At least I can pound a soda if the Bills lose. So how about that? I'll sign up for that one.
It has to be the entire soda. The entire
it has to
16 to 20 ounce. It has to be 16 to 20 ounce. Now, I'm not talking a small can.
Z-Bot's got that coming through his nose and everything right on the
I can't rip down one of those mini cans is what you're telling me.
No mini cans. No mini cans,
my boy.
If you do it before 12, it's a can. If after 12, it goes to the little plastic one. The
1 liter.
I'll tell you what.
The 1 liter.
The half liter one. The 179 one.
You guys are torturous, man. Listen, I'll sign up for that, and not only will I chug it, I'll shotgun that bitch if the Bills lose.
Oh, this is my type of guy, man. Yeah,
Z-Bot,
y'all better
I
give
tell you,
Z-Bot a
I almost
follow, man.
died. I almost died,
Hey
bro. I
Zeba, I
almost died.
appreciate you doing that for rivalry week. You turning it up
Appreciate
another
you.
level.
No question. Sign me up
Hey
for that all
Z-Bot,
day.
man,
I always
listen,
love a
that
little extra.
you're actually a stand-up Buffalo fan. There's not too many of you guys, but you're a stand-up guy, man.
Hey, it's funny. I often find when the fan bases actually talk to one another and not tweet at one another, you typically get along. Isn't that funny how it works? It's usually pretty good. When you're hiding behind the screen, that's when everybody looks like a certified dick. But when you get on and talk, I've never had a bad interaction. You guys are awesome. You guys are hilarious, and this was a blast. I really appreciate you having me on. This was awesome.
Hey, man, that's what's up, man. We appreciate you taking your time.
Yo, let me say one thing.
Oh, go ahead,
If
Drew.
we,
Man, you had your hand up forever, bro. I thought
yeah,
it was just up. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, don't worry. If we do win, or let me say that differently, when we beat you this week, because I don't think you guys can stop our offense, I don't want you to go on any space and say what you said about the Bengals playoff game where no one showed up. It could be that there is a changing of the guard, which is what I firmly believe. I believe you guys had your 3-year window, and I believe you didn't take advantage. And everyone continued to get better. And I think you guys kind of plateaued. And in my honest opinion, I think you took a step backward because you can't lose a star worth in the middle of the defense like you did and be the same. I think it's been fool's gold so far because you played 3 average quarterbacks. So the defense looks really good, where our offense has been really good against really good defenses. Well, the Denver Broncos were 5 last year. I don't know what the hell's going on this year, but I'm looking forward to this game, and I just hope that you don't say something like they didn't show up.
No, I don't make excuses for these guys, and that's why when you hear me say something like that, I genuinely mean it. I can't tell you how many times I've said that about that Bengals game. I to this day do not know what the hell happened in that one. It was the most uninspired I've ever seen this team played. You will not hear me say that at all unless they go out and they lose 50-0 and it looks like they just that's the only time you'll hear that, because I don't even know what else I'd be able to say at that point. Hopefully that doesn't happen, nor do I anticipate it. I don't. I hope, and it's being built up to be a good game. That's what we're hoping to see here. But no, I will not be making any excuses. This Bills team has run out of excuses to me. Week 1, that to me, that was your stinker, man. You got it out of the way. There's no more left, especially in the division. So you will not be hearing that from me. That's for sure.
Hey Zeba, I
Thank
got
you
here kind of
again.
late, but I appreciate you coming through, bro. It's been
Yeah,
cool chopping
Z-Bot,
up with
man.
you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you giving us
Thank
your
you, thank you,
time,
thank you.
man. It was awesome. Steve, did you have something? I'm not sure. Z-Bot, do you have time for anything else? You got to get up out of here.
Yeah. Anybody else who still have their hand up, I don't want to leave them hanging. So no
Steve, you got
doubt.
something for him?
No, mine's not a question. It was something we were gonna get to after he left.
Okay, cool. Oh, no
It's
worries.
all
Well,
good.
Did
Z-Bot?
Steve just kick out Z-Bot? Like,
No,
after he
I don't.
left?
No,
Oh, that was
I
No,
wild.
don't
no,
think he
no,
did.
no. I did
I don't
not.
think he
No.
did. I don't think he did. But what I
Oh,
will
good. I think I've
say,
overstayed my welcome a little bit anyways. But, hey, guys, I can't thank you enough. This was a blast, and I say we run it back week 18 when we get to that point. And hopefully at that point we're talking about a game where these guys are fighting for the 1 seed, and it's not meaningless. I'm hoping there's something to that game.
I got
For sure.
Dolphins. I got Dolphins 45 to 28.
Ooh, I hope not.
I got
That sounds
Dolphins 50 to
terrible.
17.
Oh, you guys are killing me here. Oh, my
50 to
God.
17.
I got 40 to 15.
Yeah, Ziba, we don't really think you guys can guard us, bro.
You know what's funny? I think win or lose on either side here, I think this game's a lower point total than I think it's being made out to be. And I get it. You see 70 from the Dolphins last week. You see the Bills put up nearly 40 the last 2 weeks. I think everybody's probably rushing to
But
hammer that
that's
over.
a great point. That's a great point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you know how it goes, fellas.
Right.
Oftentimes when it seems that easy, it's never that easy. And I think
Right.
that you know how it goes. Vegas doesn't build the Bellagio on easy bets, and they got everybody and their mother hammering that over this weekend. And that's why I'm thinking, you know what? There might be something to this one where everybody's anticipating a 40-plus point game out of these guys. And if we
That's what
don't
I'm
see it,
saying. We dropping
That's the
50.
trap. That's the
Hey,
trap.
Z-Bot,
I think you're right. I think he's right. You know what? I think he's right. When you just said that, I think that's the trap.
it should have
I
been the
think
prime
because
time game, though, Z-Bot. It should have been the prime time game
it
this week.
should
Oh
have
my
been.
God, dude! You know, I know what sucks the most about it is not only is it the Taylor Swift Bowl, we're gonna have to just watch her in the booth all night long, but we're gonna have to watch the Jets 3 more times after this weekend on prime
No,
time.
Z-Bot, that's not
It's
true. That's not true. After week 5, they start flexing. The Jets will be out of prime time after this week.
I'm
We
praying to
hope they
God. I know
flex.
that's
We
true.
hoping.
But I don't think you can flex Thursday night games, and I know the Jets have at least one of those. So it's to me, it's like the Broncos last year, where you're like every week these guys are on primetime, and it's unbearable. So I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, they were hoping for the Mahomes-Rodgers Bowl, but I also got to say there's something to a 1:00 game that really brings out the authenticity of this rivalry, because you guys know it. You guys were in the same boat as us. Now it's different. Now the Dolphins are on prime time consistently. The Bills are on prime time. These two teams wouldn't sniff the lights for the 20 years that Brady was running this division. So it's kind of nice to be battling out in our old time slot there, where we're kind of used to these two teams butting heads.
I do like that we at least have a London game we can try to maybe, hopefully, somewhat enjoy if it's not a complete stinker like they usually are before the game starts.
In Germany, right?
We got the
You play
German
the
game,
Chiefs in
Steve.
Germany. Yeah, man. That's
No, I was talking about waiting for the Dolphins and Bills game to start. At least we have the London game that we can hope is not a complete stinker like they are half of the time to kill time till it comes on.
We got football all day this Sunday.
Who's that game this week, Steve?
The Jags and somebody, I don't remember.
Jacksonville, Atlanta. And the Bills play Jacksonville in London next week. That's where the Bills are off to. So that's my other hope, too. I hope they're not looking ahead to that flight. I hope that's not even on their mind, because to me, that's unfortunate. The Jags are already going to be there for a week. I don't know how that's fair. That kind of pisses me off, but whatever. The Bills are in London next week for that 9:30 slot.
Hey, Ziba, I don't know if
Or just wait till they're there all the time.
Or when your injury report comes out.
No kidding.
I know. Ziba, what kind of shape is your safeties in this week? I seen that on the injury report, but I don't know if you.
Yeah, fortunately for us, better shape than they were the last time we saw you. We do have Hyde and Poyer healthy and in the backfield, and I know they're getting older, but that's been one of the better tandems in the league when they've been together. And I know it might not be the same with where they're at currently in their career, but they're still up there. So as of right now, you can expect both those guys to be out there, and they're going to have their work cut out for them for sure. You should expect to see them play up a good amount this coming week trying to.
Yeah, I seen both of them were dealing with injuries, so I didn't know.
Yeah, they both were. Hyde was too, but he ended up playing last week and he had a pick. So you'll see them both out there for sure, and hopefully the injuries aren't lingering, because they've both been battling with stuff for the last couple of seasons.
We're gonna drop you guys, man. It's gonna be hilarious.
Man, I want to thank you for your time, man. Again, man, you've been great. It's been a great conversation, man. We definitely got to do this again. We'll set something up. We'll chop it up, man.
Absolutely.
Good luck to you. Not this week, but next week, because I ain't rooting for you guys at all. So I need
Fellas, the pleasure's all mine, and let's see what happens. Big one this weekend, and I'm hoping it lives up to the billing. So thanks again, boys, and we'll do it again.
The AFC East runs through Miami, just so you know. Spread the word.
We'll find out on Sunday, fellas. We will find out on Sunday.
Let's
Enjoy
go.
it, boys. Enjoy it. Thanks for the time, fellas. You guys are great. Thanks a lot.
Let's go.
Hey, man.
I appreciate you, man.
Great show, guys.